this concept of sabbatical, right? It's not just about having a year off to go on beaches and just do nothing, but actually it is like an act of self-care, right? It's an act of love.
Pablo Seto's original plan was actually much bigger than taking a one-year sabbatical. He wanted to retire by age 38 and was on track to do it. He worked in finance in Toronto and maintained a super frugal lifestyle, putting away 40% of his salary per year. Then he started suffering from anxiety and panic attacks. For several years, he kept pushing through until he finally decided to take a year off now, since he had the money, and then aimed to retire at 45. Our conversation really resonated with me because of its discussion of how a sabbatical can serve as radical self-care in today's hard-driving working world. If you've ever wondered how you could save for a sabbatical, I hope you get lots of ideas from Pablo's refreshingly focused and disciplined take on money. I'm Lisa Hawashi, and this is Leap Like Me, the show about the leaps people take to make the most of this amazing life. Pablo, welcome to the show.
Hi, Lisa. I'm really excited to be able to have this conversation with you and hopefully be able to touch, motivate, inspire whoever is listening to take an action towards pursuing their dreams and to doing something that may be unexpected or totally different from what they're currently doing.
I'm really excited to have you on, and I think particularly I've been excited to have you on as a guest because you're so much at the very beginning of your sabbatical. I wanted to ask you, where are you right now and what have you been up to this week?
I actually just started my sabbatical on July 9th. So basically, I'm kind of in the second, third week of my sabbatical. This past week, I've been spending it in Paris. I'm here for the Gay Games. So I'm actually participating in the water polo tournament during the Gay Games. I've been competing with Team New York, even though I'm originally from Toronto, but I've been playing with Team New York. And so far, we've won 3 of our 4 games.
Oh my God, that's great.
Yeah.
Congrats.
What's interesting is this team, we've never played with them before, the New York players. And so it's definitely been a learning experience, but it's been beautiful to be able to play in a new place and to be in a beautiful city. And to also know that I can actually just enjoy the tournament because I don't have any work to worry to go back to, right? I can just focus and be present with the experience right now here in Paris.
And how has it been feeling for you since you left work and kind of officially started your sabbatical?
You know, what's kind of funny is I kind of liken it to jet lag. I just thought about that. You know, when you move to a new time zone, it takes a few days to get accustomed to a new environment. And so that's sort of what it's been like for me. I kind of was like work lagged. I don't know, sabbatical lag. This actually just came up to my mind because for the first week after the sabbatical I was kind of disoriented, right? Because I'm not going to work at a set time every day. I have all this free time. And initially, I just wasn't really sure what to do with myself just because it's such an abrupt change, right? And, you know, I thought that I'd have this kind of euphoric feeling of being on a sabbatical, that there's this like clear high, but actually it was just like, oh, I'm just continuing on living life. It's just that now I'm not working anymore. And so it's created this space and opened up all this time and space to really have an opportunity to look into my aspirations and what I want to do and kind of how I want to live life. And so initially, you know, I felt a little bit ambivalent. You know, there's some joy, right? Because I've accomplished something I put my mind to, but also a bit of anxiety too, because this is a brand new experience and totally out of my comfort zone.
Yeah, I remember I did feel really weird those first few days, especially of my sabbatical, like still being in my apartment, but not going to work while everyone else I knew was going to work and doing their same old thing. And yeah, I definitely felt some anxiety. It was like, what am I doing? But I felt better once I kind of got out of my normal environment. Have you noticed a change in you since going to Paris?
I actually went to London first, the UK, for a week before this. And I wouldn't say the change in environment so much, but kind of being more patient and kind to myself, that just because I've started this sabbatical, I don't have to rush into a plan. So I guess what's funny is this is what I'm trying to say is I had a plan. I was following a strict plan in place to get to the sabbatical. And that sort of energy and practice was very useful in getting me to the sabbatical. But now that I'm on the sabbatical, it's more an unplanned process, which is very different from what I was doing before. And so to be kind with myself and actually realize and recognize that having non-structure and being in a non-structured environment actually can be beneficial, right? It's been beneficial in the sense that I'm living in a different way now. That's different from what I was doing before, right? Rather than having this structure 9 to 5, I can take things as they come and play with it, right? Play with this extra time and flexibility, and take the moment to have gratitude that I've put structures in place to allow me to have an unstructured life, which is kind of funny.
Well, first of all, where did the idea of your sabbatical come from?
The idea of the sabbatical actually kind of flowed from a larger concept about valuing my time and financial independence. And so, what I mean by that is um, living in a way, living in a simple way that's in alignment with my values so that I don't have to work 40 years of my life. And I kind of got this at a very young age because I couldn't see myself working for a company for 40 years and having to sacrifice my own personal time to another institution to only have 2, 3, 4 weeks of vacation a year. And so even in high school, I'd already started kind of thinking about how to save money, how to live simply, because I didn't want to be in debt. That was actually kind of the first driver. Was I didn't want to have to take a job or be in a situation that I didn't want to because of debt. Now, that being said, I'm sure not everyone's going to be in that situation where they're debt free when they graduate from school. But to kind of understand that debt can be quite a heavy chain around one's neck and really restrict your freedom to really be able to do the things that you want to do. And so the first thing is to focus, yes, on A, getting rid of that debt, and then B, creating savings. And in order to do that, I started reading different books on how to live simply, how to save efficiently, how to invest. And because I knew that by having savings and by doing that, that would give me the option, right, to take time off if I needed to, or to take a lower paying job if I wanted to, if that job was closer to my aspiration. And so I think kind of the first book that I came across that really kind of summed it up for me was this book called Your Money or Your Life by Vicky Robbins and Joe Dominguez. So what happened was Joe Dominguez, I think back in the 60s, he retired at the ripe old age of 30. And he did that by living simply. I suspect, I don't know his actual personal life story, but I guess he probably lived in a smaller space, didn't own a car, didn't eat out that much. And what he did then was he took those savings, invested it, and then lived off the investment income from his savings. And so he was able to stop working at the age of 30. And what was really poignant for me for that story was that he actually died at a very young age. I think he was maybe 68 years old when he passed away. And so that really sent a message, right? Life may be a lot shorter than you expect it to be. So it's then important to value and treasure your time. And in this book, what they equate time with is money, right? We say money is time, and that's your life. And so where you choose to put your money to is where you choose to put your life into. And actually, what's really funny is my dad and my stepmom were actually visiting me from Hong Kong and Vancouver, and they came out to watch me play water polo. So I was just sitting in the Chanel store with my dad. Totally a store I wouldn't go into, right? But it's just not in line with me. But for some people, it's perfect, right? Like it's whatever's in line with your values. And so he was saying that people like to spend lots of money for certain experiences. And so in the case with Chanel, right, when you go in, someone opens the door for you. You have your own personal attendant. People are very patient. They ask you different questions. They'll serve you tea. You like it. And so what you're doing is you're paying a lot for not just the product, right, the Chanel product, but also for the experience and the service. And then just in that moment, said to dad, yeah. So for me, rather than spending my money on a Chanel experience, I'm putting my money towards taking a whole year off, right? That's where I'm putting my attention to. And so I'm bringing up this point not because I'm saying, it's wrong to put your money into material goods or whatnot. It's more about the question is looking deeply into where you're putting your attention to, where you're putting your life energy and your money to, and if it's in alignment with what your values are. So if you want to put it towards a big house, or some nice luxury good products, and that's in alignment with your values, then go do it. But perhaps if you look more deeply into it and you see that you actually want more free time for yourself, maybe more time for your community, for your family and friends, then perhaps, it's time to shift the attention, right, of where you're putting your money, your life into.
Yeah. And I want to hear, what did your dad say to that?
I try to remember exactly. He was like, yeah, that's exactly what you're doing. He was really supportive. Just like, yeah, this is what you're doing. I think he has some admiration and respect for me because my dad has worked nonstop as a physician, 6 days a week since he's been a doctor, and he's never actually taken time off for himself. And so I think like what's great about my dad is that he just wants me to be happy, and he's really happy that I've taken action to pursue a dream, right? And that's something that he's never actually done himself.
How was it to tell your parents about your decision?
Oh, okay. Oh, they're not surprised at all.
They weren't.
They weren't, no, because I'm really close to my dad. That's funny that you asked, because I guess that's true. I didn't think about that. Each person's experience with their parents is going to be different, right?
Yeah.
Like it's funny enough. My dad, he just goes back to, as long as you have the financial resources in place, right, then do it. There's nothing stopping you. And so I'm actually having some gratitude right now. I didn't think that. Yeah, I'm pretty lucky that my father's been really supportive.
You've been super focused on getting a good job so you could save money and really have independence. And so, how did the sabbatical kind of enter into this whole picture?
What's funny enough is as I was getting more focused on my finances, so doing two sides of the equation, keeping my expenses low and making more money, I started getting a surplus to more and more investments and savings that I was putting aside in the bank, in stocks, bonds, and cash and real estate. And what started happening is, as I had more of these resources, I realized that I could actually take time off from work. And my original intention actually was to save enough that I could stop working at age 38. So I'm actually 35 right now. And basically, I had planned and forecasted that I would have enough by age 38 to have enough interest, dividends, and rent monies from my investments to kind of cover a very basic lifestyle, probably about $20,000 to $25,000 a year that I could live off of. And so, in a sense, that was kind of like a permanent sabbatical, right? So just by focusing on being financially independent, I could then actually not work for the rest of my life from age 38. And then so what stemmed out of this sabbatical is that before I was really focused, right? And I was just like, okay, focus on the plan. And like I was kind of in a rush to get to this goal. But then what had happened was back in 2011, I actually just had really bad anxiety from my job. And I'd wanted to actually take time off then. I had enough saved that I could have taken a sabbatical in 2011, but I decided then to just push through it, right? Because that's always what I'd done in life, was just push through my pain and anxiety and fears. But something shifted then at that point, because then I'd realized that life isn't a sprint. I mean, it sounds like cliche, but it is a long marathon, a long run. And so there's nothing wrong with going on a sabbatical earlier than expected. Because again, right, you really never know what's going to happen to you. Um, like I said, that fellow from the book Your Money, Your Life, he passed away at a very young age. And so in the grand scheme of things, right, okay, so maybe instead of being permanently financially independent by age 38, I can maybe push it back to 45, but then have a couple of sabbaticals in between, because we're going to experience and see things differently at different ages. And so, why not seize the opportunity now at a younger age to really experience this? So I discovered that balance between, delayed gratification versus immediate gratification and finding a happy medium. And that's kind of why I'm doing the sabbatical earlier than later, is because I was more on the delayed gratification end of the spectrum. And for me, delaying was having a negative impact on my health, because I wasn't taking the time to really take care of the anxieties and fears that I had, because I just got to focus on work. And as opposed to, I did have this plan in place and I do have these resources. So why not take the sabbatical now so I can have time to practice self-care and to look deeply into what my aspirations and volitions are, so that I can take proper action sooner than later.
It was kind of like you had this sort of health crisis back in 2011. What I'm hearing is it that you really felt like you still owed it to yourself at this point to take time to really recover and to feel better?
Yeah, partly, yeah, because it's easy to overlook and ignore your own needs. And so what's interesting is how, like, this concept of sabbatical, right? It's not just about having a year off to like go on beaches and just do nothing, but actually it is like an act of self-care, right? Is an act of love, right? To say that, hey, set up these resources and put them in place so that I can actually take some time off. And it doesn't have to be a year too. I think what may be intimidating is that sometimes people think, oh, all or none. I have to save up so much that then I can just go off for a year. It could even be just a month or 2 months or 3 months, but just to really give yourself a present, right? To say, hey, you know what? I am important and I need to take care of myself. And so rather than maybe spending my money and putting my money in towards areas that may seem to give me happiness right now, it may be better maybe to reallocate those resources into your sabbatical pool, right? That money then will allow you to take care of yourself and to look after yourself.
When it came time to do it, was it hard to give that gift to yourself?
Oh, totally. I'm so you like hit it on the ball. Because my whole life, right? It's like, oh, deny, right? Ignore myself. And it's funny too. Even when I first started the spout, that ambivalent feeling, like, I don't really deserve this. It's kind of funny. It's like I didn't know how to express gratitude to my past self for putting this gift in place for me. And so actually, it's funny that has also been part of this sabbatical process, is to actually take time out of each day and actually thank myself. Like, Pablo, yes, you did great. I'm really proud of you for actually taking these steps. Because it's so easy to overlook that, right? To overlook my accomplishments and the things that I've done to really set this up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I really relate to how difficult it is to actually follow through on, like, it's okay to take this time to take care of me. My own sabbatical, a big driver for it, that was even hard to admit to myself, was that I had had PTSD in 2010, so 3 years before I finally took my sabbatical. And as part of my recovery for that, and that had also come from work, because I had worked in Haiti after the earthquake there.
Okay.
And the therapist who helped me through that time had said, you need to take time off. And so even though, I had someone prescribing me time off to recover, it was still really hard for me to follow through on that and say it's okay to do.
It's interesting, eh? Like, just from what you're sharing, is we stop ourselves from taking these actions because, yeah, it is difficult to practice self-care because it's a skill that you need to learn, right? And sometimes we may not get that from our surroundings, from our parents, or from our communities, not because, they don't want to teach it to you. It's because they don't know how. If our parents and our communities knew how to teach self-care, they would have done it. They would have passed that information on to us, right? Because when you know how to take care of yourself, you then have more capacity to take care of others.
Yeah. So we've been talking about some of the mental blocks that can come up with actually following through on a sabbatical. What for you was maybe some of the hardest parts for planning or logistics?
I would say for the day-to-day things, it actually wasn't as difficult for me. I do take initiatives. So I would actually, when I'd work, I would just look up online where our human resources policies were on how to go on leave. I would speak to people. I would say more the difficulty is not for myself, but the people around me. And I say that because I don't think it's a common occurrence where people actually will take the steps to take a leave of absence. So the onus was on me to look into what I need to do and to guide the people around me on how to take that leave of absence. And so by doing that research, first, I could actually then communicate to my bosses and kind of help guide them through the process. So it made it easier for them to approve my personal leave.
So you decided to go on leave ultimately rather than quit your job.
Yes. And it's funny. So the reason why I decided to go on leave is I actually really love the company I work for. I work for a great Canadian bank that values diversity and has been really supportive of the LGBT community. And I actually really enjoyed my job. So funny enough, when I decided to take my sabbatical, I left from a position of being very happy. I loved my bosses. I loved my coworkers, and I found my job really interesting, and it paid quite well. So it's kind of funny. Usually you think people leave on sabbaticals. So I assume that people go on sabbaticals because they're in a difficult position, but I gave a lot up to go on this journey.
Did that make it harder at the end?
I would say maybe I had some more reservations about being on sabbatical because I was living in a good position. But then I went back to myself and I thought, you know what? You're always going to be able to find a reason not to go on a sabbatical. And those reasons can either be good reasons or bad reasons, but there's always a reason to not take a sabbatical. And sometimes you just got to throw your hat over the fence and then go fetch it.
Tell us about the adventure that you're just embarking on right now. What do you have in your plans and ideas for how you're going to spend this year?
First thing I did was just to reward myself with a 6-week trip traveling through Europe. So I spent a week in the UK and spending a week in Paris right now for the Gay Games. I'll be spending another week in southwestern France, beautiful countryside in a Buddhist monastery. It's actually going to be a great retreat because it's going to be with other young people from 18 to 35. So I'm quite excited for that. Then afterwards, I'm going to the Netherlands to spend a week there with my friend for a week. He lives in Toronto now, but he's Dutch. And so he's going to be back visiting family. So I'll be able to stay with him and his mother. And then afterwards, I'm planning on going to Berlin for half a week, Hamburg for half a week, and then back to London and Oxford before coming back to Canada. So I didn't want to fully book my whole year. I thought it's good to just kind of book a trip, just for the first 6 weeks. And it tied in nicely with some of these other things that I wanted to do. But then kind of leave the rest of the year for me to stay at home in Toronto to kind of focus on my personal projects. Because personally for me, what I want to use the sabbatical for is actually to work on those things I didn't have time to do when I was working full time. Using that time to practice more self-care, maybe do more lifting, weightlifting, maybe take on martial arts, work on a programming skill, maybe try to blog. There's a whole bunch of things that on my bucket list that I can do now that all this time is freed up.
And you also have language learning on that list, right?
Yes, that's right.
Didn't you say 4 languages?
Yes, I speak 5 languages. Yeah, you could.
Oh, wow.
I speak English, Cantonese, Mandarin, French, and Hebrew.
Very cool. Where did the Hebrew come from?
So funny enough, this is actually back in 2011. I'd taken a month off to go to travel in Israel, but I wanted to learn Arabic first in 2011 because I was briefly dating a Lebanese guy. And I always think, when you date someone from a different culture, learn the language because you have a partner to practice with.
Totally.
I think you could speak to that, right?
Yeah.
And I found that Arabic was really tough to learn, and that relationship didn't work out. So I was like, okay, I'm going to learn something closer. I'll learn Hebrew because I actually had a Hebrew phrase book that my first boyfriend, my first ex, had given to me that had been sitting in my in my drawer for many years. So I thought, you know what, I'll take that up. And then yeah, so I started practicing it, and then I met my second ex, my second boyfriend, who was Israeli. So I practiced with him, and now I can speak Hebrew.
Very
So
cool.
not that I choose boyfriends based off their language ability, just have it that way.
You just take advantage of a good opportunity for language learning.
Yeah, exactly. Well, in Paris, right? It's so great to be able to use my French.
Super fun. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? Like, it's funny. Like language learning, going on a sabbatical, they're all tied into kind of the same sort of psyche. It's like to not worry about getting things perfect. It's just going out there, taking an action, trying to make mistakes. And through that trial and error process, beautiful things come out of it. I don't speak these other languages perfectly, right? I make mistakes all the time. But because I'm willing to experiment and play with the language, I can get my point across with people, like with locals, we'll create a closer connection. And then also during that exchange, they'll correct my conversational skills and then I'll improve from that. And so I like bring it back to, going on a sabbatical is, what might stop you is like, oh, I need to get this perfect. I need to get it right. And, I need to plan my whole sabbatical from A to Z. But it's not that way. It's more just going out there, taking an action. And even if it doesn't turn out the way you expected, maybe, you make a mistake or, you think, oh my gosh, I left my job. I left a good job or, what I'm doing, to be kind to yourself and to say, hey, you know what? I'm trying something new. I'm trying something different. Like, when we're little kids, it was so easy just to try different things and to play and to talk to others and not really be worried about the consequences or making a mistake or doing things to look good or doing things properly or right. Right? It's just taking that chance and then also being okay with yourself if it doesn't pan out because at least you've tried.
So it sounds like an important part of your design for your sabbatical was to sort of create this kind of sandbox time for yourself.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that analogy, the sandbox. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, your family is originally from China, and you
Yes.
mentioned you're fifth generation. I was just curious if you feel like your cultural or family history has influenced your sabbatical at all or your decision to take one.
I had to express a lot of gratitude to my grandparents on my dad's side. My grandpa actually retired at age 50, I think, age 50 or 55, somewhere between there. He ran a restaurant in a small town in Alberta. So Alberta is a province of Canada just north of Montana. And he had lived really frugally, right? The immigrant story, they lived simply so they could put their kids through school. And he took his savings so that he could stop working on age 50. And I thought that was really inspiring. That's pretty different, right? From how you typically think, right? That people work from, 40 years, retire at 65, get the gold watch and things like that. But my grandpa did it a lot earlier. And that's kind of inspirational. So the frugality I got from my grandparents, and I'd say, the drive to get a better paying job and to have more resources came from my dad because my dad's a doctor and he worked really hard and did really well in school. And so it was nice to have that inspiration from both sides, the frugality aspect, but also the earnings aspect. So the combination of playing financially independence, like from a defensive aspect, which is the expense side of the equation, and the offensive side is the income side of the equation.
Gotcha. Yeah, it sounds like you really had a legacy of frugality and discipline and focus are some things that really stand out to me. Being really, really clear about like what you want, as part of that focus.
Yeah, it helps too, right? Because having that focus can help you move through some of those difficult times too, right? Like especially when you're in a community of people that may not share the same values as you. Maybe you're brown bagging your lunch to work and living simply so you can go on that sabbatical. Whereas your peer group, and I see this too in my peer group, some are driving fancy cars or living bigger houses than me. And the pressure can be really strong to conform with who your peer group is. And so what can help to move through that is to have a strong aspiration, to know that, yes, I'm doing these things. So at this time right now, it may seem difficult because other people are living it up and I'm not. I can't go out clubbing or, get my fancy clothes. But I know I'm doing this because this is an act of self-care, right? I'm going to be taking these savings and putting it towards taking time off. So that's the aspiration. And then the other part is kind of your conditions, your environment, so that, to seek out other people who are frugal and who are focused on taking that sabbatical. And what's wonderful is, like, with the internet now, you can find communities and forums of people who are living simply so that they can take this time off.
So the amazing thing for me is that you were able to take this time off by living so frugally and saving 40% of your salary from your working career. And I wanted to ask you, if the rest of us want to put 40% of our salaries toward our sabbaticals and early retirement, how should we get started? What would be your advice?
The first thing is, I would definitely recommend some basic books on investing. One author that really comes to my mind is John Bogle, or Jack Bogle. And he talks about taking your money and investing in index funds. And index funds basically are funds that invest in all the available stocks that are available in the market. And so they're very low cost. And typically index funds will beat out actively managed funds. So actively managed funds are funds where managers are picking and choosing stocks 80% of the time, just because their costs are lower. There's less trading involved, so there's less tax implications. There are lots of blogs available on this, on investing. Another one that actually would probably be really great for your blog and your listeners is the Millionaire Teacher. And the reason why I say that is he's Canadian, but he's an expat living in Singapore, and he talks about how to invest from an expat perspective. So that would be a good blog. But the first thing I think is just really keeping track of your expenses, being mindful of where your money is going. Write it all down for a month, because if you don't know where your money is going, it's like trying to get to a destination without a compass and a map, or in this day and age, without your smartphone and Google Maps. So once you actually write down your expenses, it really takes away the mystery, right? Because then you can actually start seeing where your money's flowing through, and then you can start taking decisions. So you maybe realize, hey, wait a second, this car is costing me $500 a month. If I were to sell it and to bike and take public transit, maybe that will save me an extra $400 a month. And there you go. Within a year, you have $5,000 for your sabbatical. And then the next thing is, maybe look at your housing arrangement. And do you need that space, right? Do you need that extra room that's just sitting there, right? Maybe you can downsize from a 2-bedroom to a 1-bedroom or a studio. And then that will save you another, $500 or $700 a month. And if you think you need that room for a guest, you can take the savings from use the savings from living in a smaller place to rent a space for your guests if you need to. And I know, like, right away, I could probably imagine how some of the listeners are going to be like, oh my gosh, how can I do this? How can I do that? And then it just goes back down to, again, what is your aspiration and what do you want? If this sabbatical is important to you, then okay, yeah, then you can take these steps. But if you don't take action, right? If you're doing the same thing over and over again, how are you going to be able to have the resources to go on that sabbatical?
No, it's true. I also employed a lot of the things that you mentioned in order to fund my own sabbatical. Like, I didn't buy a place. I was super crazy about making sure I had low rent. And I rode a bike for a really long time when I lived in Portland. So yeah, it's true. It's about making a choice. And if it's really important to you, then finding the way to make it happen.
Yeah, you're right. And again, like, it's not an all or none thing, right? It doesn't have to be your sabbatical. How about just a month or 2 months, right? You can be flexible. What's great is, like, there's so many options out there, and there's so many ways of going about it that's wonderful. Okay, so there's certain things, of course, that are like the laws of physics. you have to spend less than you earn. Like there's no way around it. That is reality. Everyone, yeah, like you have to be able to save money. That is, but in terms of how long you want to do your sabbatical, where you want to do your sabbatical, how you want to get there, right? Whether it's like downsizing, maybe moving to a smaller town, or negotiating a higher wage at work. I'm sure you probably do that with some of your because you life coach, right? Like there's the sides, right? Is that there's different ways to create that bigger buffer so that you can get to your sabbatical faster.
Right. Well, Pablo, we're going to have to transition, and I have had so much fun talking to you. I've got 3 last questions for you. The first question is, what do you wish you had known before you took your leap?
I think probably that some of my habits would still continue into the leave. I didn't realize that, just because I go on sabbatical, that all of a sudden, magically, like I'd be this new, beautiful, brand new human being. I know, pretty naive. But it's sort of like some of the things that I'd done before, I still continue to do. So my commitment before was, okay, I'm going to like make sure I sleep better, and, I don't use electronics before I go to bed, and I go to bed at a decent time when I'm on sabbatical. Has that happened yet? No. I'm not beating myself up for it, but like, it's like, okay, I'm going to need to take some steps to make sure that I go to bed at a decent time.
Work was not totally responsible for that habit, huh?
Yes, totally. You're right. Yes. Like it's funny how I ascribe a lot of my negative habit energies to work when in fact they weren't. So that actually has been that's something I wish I'd known before.
What was the most unexpected thing that's come so far from your leave?
That actually ties into that first question is that, funny enough, I thought that it'd be this euphoric feeling, like I'd be a totally different person. But actually, I'm just continuing on. I'm the same person. I'm still living life day to day on the sabbatical. And so it's still important that I practice mindfulness and being aware of where I put my attention to things.
For someone who's thinking of taking a similar risk, what's one piece of advice you'd give them?
Definitely, I'd say take a small step, take a small action that is different and contrary to what you've been doing. Because that's the only way that's going to shift your reality, right? And shift yourself closer to that sabbatical. So maybe, try biking to work once a week. That's something that's totally different. And then you may discover, hey, wait a second, I actually like biking to work. It's healthier, it's cheaper, it's faster, so I can get rid of my car. That could be the first step. The other step is I'm going to try packing lunch to work every week. And so do it for a month maybe and see how the experiment goes. Maybe I'm going to start reading a blog, right? About being on sabbaticals, or living frugally so I can get to those goals. So doing something that's different, because again, if you're doing the same thing over and over again, if you're spending more than you're earning every month and you continue to do that, you're not going to be able to have the resources to take a sabbatical. So take an action, no matter how big or small, that's different from what you're doing.
And as a final question to wrap up, I want to ask you, for people who are listening to our conversation today, if they want to stay connected with you, how can they do that?
Okay, so pretty simple. I hope that this conversation has inspired you to take action. And if you have any questions or would like to share experiences with me, or if you decided to take an action because of this conversation, you can reach me at my email address at pablo.seto@gmail.com. So that's pablo.seto@gmail.com.
Well, I wish you the best on this journey that you're embarking on, and also that you guys do continue to have a great time at the Gay Games in Paris. Good luck to your team. And thanks again for joining us, Pablo, and sharing your story with us.
Thank you so much, Lisa. It was so much fun talking to you. And thank you for giving me this forum and this space to share some of my insights. And also thank you for sharing your insights with me too.
Pablo and I connected after he did a random internet search on sabbaticals and found me. He wrote to tell me a bit about his story, and I was so happy when he said he'd do an interview with me, even though he was just starting his sabbatical. I actually discovered the vast online community that Pablo refers to here about financial independence and early retirement when I was ending my own sabbatical. It was a time when I wanted to be really savvy about stretching the remaining money I had. I was getting ready to start my own business and my new life with my husband in Spain. If you have money goals that you'd like to make headway on, I can definitely recommend this super supportive community. They're really impressive in their dedication to their money goals, their resourcefulness, and their often counterculture perspective of how to live your life in a society that's often luring us toward debt and hyper-consumerism. I definitely recommend checking them out. Thanks so much for listening to today's show. If you're enjoying the show, we would love it if you left us a rating or review on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Share it with your friends or family, and that helps us grow our audience and reach more people. We so appreciate your help with that. Don't forget to head over to my website, lisahawashi.com, to see photos of Pablo on his sabbatical and back in Toronto, as well as additional links and resources that he mentioned in this interview, as well as some additional others. If you're thinking of taking a leap as well, first of all, that's super exciting. And also know that we're here to help. So you can head on over to the Leap Like Me community on Facebook to connect with like-minded people, get advice and perspective. And I'm also on there too to answer any questions. And you can also reach out to me personally. This is my specialty. I love helping people through these moments of starting a leap or getting through some of the obstacles that come up along the way. You can contact me to learn more about coaching. I work with both individuals and groups of two, which are couples and business partners. And you can get in touch with me either by visiting my website, lisahawashi.com, or ping me at Lisa Hawashi on Facebook or Instagram. Until next week, thanks again for listening to Leap Like Me.